I'm James. Hi everyone. I'm from Plant-Based Treaty, and delighted to be joined today by Dr. Julie Chan. Julie is a plant-based board-certified naturopathic doctor, registered acupuncturist, intravenous parental therapist, and NES practitioner. Her practice, Liberty Wellness Clinic, which I've used myself, which is fantastic, has been providing holistic healthcare in York Region, Ontario since 2006. She utilizes many modalities, including traditional Chinese acupuncture and cupping, homeopathic medicine, botanical medicine, holistic counseling, plant-based and holistic nutrition, and lifestyle medicine. Welcome. Nice to see you, Julie.
Thank you, James, for having me today. It's wonderful to see you again.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We really appreciate it. And yeah, it's wonderful to see you too. It's been a few years since we last saw
Yes,
each other.
this is a
Um,
wonderful initiative that you guys are doing. So I'm really happy to be able to partake in it and hopefully answer some questions because I think, many of the attendees have been starting this smoothie challenge, I believe, right?
Exactly, yeah. We're a week in now, 7 days into the Green Smoothie Challenge. So
Mhm.
hopefully everyone is enjoying that. And we do, just a reminder, we do have check-in calls every Saturday at
Mhm.
5 p.m. Eastern. So if people want to join that and then just have a general chat about how people are getting on with the smoothie, that would be great. We had the first one this past Saturday. So yeah, we have a bunch of questions for Dr. Julie, and just before we start, just wanna say a little disclaimer that neither myself nor Dr. Julie nor Plant-Based Treaty are offering medical advice here today. This is just uh, some general questions for Julie about how plant-based can help. And if anyone has any kind of medical issues, of course, please speak to your primary care doctor about that. Um, okay, so let's make a start. Dr. Julie, as a naturopathic doctor, how do you see Dr. Brooke Goldner and Thomas Tadlock's hypernourishing green smoothie supporting overall health, and are there specific benefits you'd expect to see?
So first of all, I was looking through Dr. Goldner's hypernourishing smoothie, and I was really happy to see the ratios and everything. Because in my practice, I generally suggest anywhere between 60 to 80% of greens, alongside with 20 to 40% of fruit. So it kind of lies right in there. And and this smoothie is designed to flood the body with high density nutrients, as well as antioxidants and anti inflammatory compounds. And I think before I kind of jump into what conditions it's good for, I want to just spend a little bit of time to talk about what is inflammation and what is oxidative stress. Because I think everyone has heard these terms before. They know they're not good for the body, but it might not be very clear to people exactly how these two processes can manifest into chronic diseases. So I'm just going to take like a few minutes to explain about that, if I may.
Yeah,
So
please do. Yeah.
yeah, because it is confusing. People hear about it, but they don't really understand it. So, inflammation is a natural and essential part of the body's immune response. So, it's not always bad because it helps us to fight infections. It helps to remove damaged debris like cells that have died off and toxins. So, it can prepare an injured area for healing and for tissue repair. And it also induces pain and swelling, which is a warning sign for the person to rest. So it forces us to prevent any further injury. Now, what happens though is when inflammation becomes excessive or chronic, this is when it becomes problematic because chronic inflammation leads to the damage of healthy tissues. It can cause inflammation due to the increase in oxidative stress. So that's when the second term comes in. What is oxidative stress? So, oxidative stress is when we have higher free radicals, which are compounds that can damage healthy cells, there's more free radicals than antioxidants. And antioxidants are compounds that protects our cells from damage. Whether it mops them up, sequesters them, neutralizes them. So that is why, when we see high oxidative stress combined with this low grade chronic inflammation, this is the root cause of almost every single chronic disease that we see. And people will ask, where do I get this chronic inflammation? And one of the top causes of chronic inflammation is a poor diet. So when you're eating a poor diet full of processed foods, such as fast foods, foods that are high in processed meats, sugars, I mean, I believe most of our attendees are probably plant-based, but I hope, this could help others as well and spread this word to the community. But food additives and chemicals, trans fats, saturated fats, and remember, most saturated fats are coming from animal-based products. And then there's the refined carbohydrates like white bread, pastas, and omega-6 oils. So omega-6 oils comes from oils such as corn oil, canola, seed oils, soy oil. So these are the type of oils that will drive inflammation because they contain high levels of omega-6 that then can turn into something called arachidonic acid, which is pro-inflammatory. So a poor diet is one of the root issues and to leading to chronic diseases and one of the most modifiable risks. And also a diet that lacks fiber can be a huge issue. And also this all leads to poor gut health because obviously when you're not eating enough fiber, you're not getting enough prebiotics. That leads to a lot of issues with our microbiome. So that microbiome is essentially all the bacteria and organisms that live in our body. So when we're born, we're actually 99% human cells, but there's 1% that's actually made from our microbiome. So they constitute a large part and they play a huge role in our immune system, in our digestion, in our ability to absorb and process nutrients. So they're absolutely essential. But when we have dysbiosis, what then happens is there could be overgrowth of bad bacteria, maybe yeast, maybe parasites. And these microorganisms will start to secrete what we call endotoxins, which are toxins from the gut. Now, all of this can then lead to leaky gut. Many people heard of leaky gut, but what is leaky gut? So we have to understand that the barrier in the gut has to be very tight. So when there is a breach in that integrity, and there's increase in that intestinal permeability, this allows undigested food particles and toxic waste products and harmful microorganisms to leak through the intestinal wall, which then goes in the bloodstream and it triggers an immune reaction. And this contributes to inflammation. So those are one of the top two, but we also have other ones such as chronic stress, persistent stress leading to elevated cortisol. This is a problem I see in 99% of people today is chronic stress, lack of sleep, a sedentary lifestyle. When you're not moving, that will lead to chronic inflammation. And the WHO recommends that the average person should be exercising about 150 minutes a day. So I always ask my patients, how much do you exercise? How much are you sleeping? What's your quality of sleep like? These are very important. Obesity. Right now, we see some of the highest rates of child obesity. And it is a huge problem because having extra body fat will increase inflammation, especially visceral fat. So visceral fat is sort of the abdominal fat that we see. And then it basically means there's actual fat that's starting to accumulate around our organ systems. And our organs don't work well when it's surrounded by fatty tissue. Chronic infections. So I've had lots of people since COVID hit with long COVID. And that can cause all sorts of immune issues like inflammation and autoimmunity. And then the obvious, right? We have smoking, alcohol, so poor lifestyle choices. And a big one that a lot of people kind of bypass is environmental pollution. So environmental pollution basically are pro-oxidants. So they're going to be flooding our body with this oxidative stress, and it's going to deplete a lot of our good antioxidants, so our body's not able to repair ourselves. So what is so bad about all this chronic inflammation and excessive oxidative stress is gradually you see that the body is no longer able to repair itself like it needs to. And we see this progression of damaged cells, and damaged cells leads to chronic disease. So in Canada, 89% of all deaths are attributed to chronic diseases. So what are these? What are chronic diseases? We're talking about heart disease, cancer, respiratory diseases, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, and liver disease. And the WHO predicts that 80% of these diseases are actually preventable through diet and lifestyle. So we need to understand that chronic disease doesn't just happen in old age. It accumulates silently from when you're young to adulthood. So the peak preventive window is between 20 and 40 years old. Now, if you're past that age, it's never too late. But if we don't do anything about it, we see in the stats that 50% of people between 45 to 55, 50% of people have at least one chronic disease already. So now looping back to your question, James, is why is this hypernourishing smoothie so beneficial for our health? When we look at the nutrients that are found, when we're looking at dark leafy greens like kale, spinach, it's so rich in chlorophyll, it's rich in vitamins like A, C, K. There's lots of minerals inside like magnesium and folic acid. All of these help us to combat inflammation and reduce oxidative stress. Because remember, antioxidants will clean up these free radicals and prevents them from damaging our cells. So a green smoothie like this will help with tissue healing and also will help to fight inflammation. And then you're adding in lots of wonderful seeds. So flax and chia seeds are two of the richest sources of plant-based omega-3s. And as we know, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, so they can help with a lot of inflammatory conditions. Now, inflammation underlies and causes a lot of these health issues, as I mentioned, but someone who has very obvious inflammation, let's say someone with arthritic pain, they will notice that by drinking smoothies on a regular basis can very likely help to reduce chronic pains and autoimmune discomforts, which often include muscle pains and joint pains. And then, of course, we look at the other vitamins in there, like vitamin C, vitamin A again, vitamin E. These will all help to boost our immune system. So smoothies can help with things like allergies. With the high amounts of vitamin C, it's going to help with inducing more collagen production. So collagen will improve our joint health, our skin health, and also enhance that tissue recovery. And then look at the large amount of fiber. I think some people probably get more fiber in that one smoothie than their entire day because some people don't eat their vegetables. And when you're looking at the fiber, it's going to help to detoxify the body. It's going to really help to, again, bring the toxins out of the system, which will improve your energy, your gut health. And the bananas that are in there. So there's going to be lots of prebiotics that are found in smoothies as well. And for those of you who don't really know what prebiotics are, it's basically a fiber, but it's used as food for our microbiome. And when our microbiome eats the prebiotics, it can generate short-chain fatty acids. And the short-chain fatty acids improves that gut barrier. So it's a very important process that, we get lots and lots of fiber in our body. And all of this will translate to better skin health, better liver health, better cardiovascular health. I've seen people lower their blood sugars just by simply introducing a smoothie a day, reducing their cholesterol, inflammation. So in general, you'll see that just by doing a green smoothie a day, you are pretty much moving yourself into that preventive strategy of reducing chronic diseases. And if you do it long enough, you're going to see results. And I believe Dr. Goldner just published a study in 2024. She did a case study on 3 females, all suffering from autoimmune disease. So I think it was lupus and Sjogren's. And within 4 weeks of following this protocol, they had a drastic reduction in their symptoms. And they remained symptom-free for 6+ years with no reliance on medications. So it's huge. I mean, this can be extrapolated to, I think, larger studies, but this is a start. And there have been many studies since 2019 on the benefits of green smoothies. So it's backed by science.
Wow. Yeah, well, thank you, Julie. So much amazing information there. I took a couple of notes. I've got a couple of follow-up questions. So the inflammation you're saying causes chronic disease. One of the questions I had was, so the food, the negative food you're mentioning that can cause inflammation. Will the green smoothie actually help reduce inflammation? And then second question I have, you talked about seed oils and omega-6. And the challenge emphasizes recipes with 75% greens and omega-3 sources like flax and chia. So can you just talk a little bit about the difference between omega-3 and omega-6? And then finally, from this little bit, you also mentioned sleep and exercise. Can you just reiterate how important those two components are to like a healthy lifestyle?
So that was a lot of questions. Let's start with the first one. Can you rewind? What was the very first question? And I'm going to go in order. I think it was about inflammation, if the green smoothies can actually help to reduce
Yes.
the inflammation, right? So we always want our food to be healing our body and not to mop up all the toxins and oxidative stress from a bad diet. So yes, I mean, if someone's eating a very bad diet, but then they're intaking some smoothies, it can probably counteract the harm from the food that we shouldn't be eating, but then there may not be many nutrients left for our body for healing. So that is why we want to, I mean, this is what I see in my practice, right? A lot of patients are coming in, eating a far from ideal diet, and I get them started by just getting them to take a smoothie a day, just to encourage them to, get that intake. And often they feel much better already. But I then encourage them, once they get on that wagon of feeling better on fruits and vegetables, then we start modifying the rest of their diet. So now they're going to be intaking less and less compounds that will lead to oxidative stress, like all what I said, trans fats, saturated fats, high salt foods, sugary foods. We start to work on the diet. So now the goal is anything you put in your body should be helping your body and not harming your body, especially as we age. I say every bite counts, and your food can be your medicine. So that is sort of how I migrate with my patients. But for a start, a green smoothie absolutely can negate some of the inflammation, from a poor diet. And then your second question was about seed oils, right? Like what seeds are good, what seeds are bad in a way.
Yeah. So there's been a
Yeah,
lot in the media recently about seed
seed oils,
oils, and
right?
then you mentioned
Yeah,
omega-6, but then the green smoothie has omega-3 like flax and chia. So
right. It is a bit
what's the difference
confusing.
between those, and why is the omega-3 so good compared
Yeah.
to the omega-6?
Yeah, so it's confusing because when news come out and they say all seed oils are bad. Now, not all seeds are equal. So some seeds are higher in omega-6. So like chia seeds and flax seeds, they're very rich in omega-3, but they have less omega-6. So it's always a balance between the two oils. We do need both, but we prefer omega-3 because it's anti-inflammatory. Omega-6 contains something called linoleic acid, which can be converted into arachidonic acid in the body, triggering inflammation. So we don't want as many omega-6s. Now, unfortunately, some seeds are higher in omega-6. So let's say sunflower seeds, peanut oil, things like certain other seeds that they use to make oil from, they're higher in omega-6, which makes them less desirable than something like flax seeds and chia seeds. And when we also look at oils as well, That's another thing aside from seed oil. So I hope that makes sense. So when we look at seeds, we have to look at the ratio. Is this a more omega-3 rich seed or a more omega-6 rich seed? And we always want to opt for omega-3. So Dr. Goldner's recipe is perfect because she chose the 2 seeds that are highest in omega-3. And then people are wondering about oils, right? What about different types of oils? So we always want to opt for oils that are rich in omega-9 because omega-9 oils are those that does not contribute to bad cholesterol. So these are the olive oils and also the avocado oil. And so other oils for cooking are not as desirable because, again, they can lead to more inflammation as well as just more cholesterol. So I hope that part is clear. But it is very confusing because usually when someone publishes something, they don't give you a breakdown of what seeds are good and what seeds are bad. Yeah. I
Yeah,
want
perfect.
bad.
Thank you for clarifying
Sorry,
that.
I didn't want to label them as bad. I mean, sunflower seeds are very, very healthy, but we suggest eating it as a whole food. Like putting sunflower seeds on your salad and all that is wonderful because when you eat it as whole food, you're getting the balance between all the protein and fibers and nutrients, and there's going to be a little bit of oils in there. That's okay. But when we're talking about cooking, and using, let's say sunflower oil for cooking, that's a large amount of oil, right? So that's when we don't suggest using seed oils. It's more for cooking.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and the final part of my question there was just about, you mentioned diet. So you mentioned exercise and sleep, and how important are those 2 components to a healthy lifestyle?
So always diet comes first. When we look at chronic disease, really 80%, and even obesity, I talk a lot about obesity as people tend to hit the gym, 6 times a week, and then they don't really change their diet. But when we talk about chronic disease, at 70-80% of chronic disease influence is coming from our diet, and 20 to 30% comes from our exercise. So I always emphasize to my patients is to first focus on your diet, channel all your energy into eating better, sourcing better ingredients, better produce, organics if they can for the dirty dozen, so they're not intaking all the herbicides and pesticides, working on cooking. I have lots of patients who don't know how to cook, so the smoothie is perfect for them. And then we work on exercise after, once they have the diet, all secured, then we can start to encourage patients to start just moving. And it doesn't need to be like you need to buy gym membership or anything. You can just move at home, do squats, run on the spot, up and down the stairs if you have stairs, just simple movements, 20 minutes a day. That's all we really need people to do is 150 minutes or so of exercise a week. And that usually is enough for most people. And sleep, you mentioned about sleep. So the question is like quantity of sleep or so. So 8 hours is the belief, but the fact is actually the amount of sleep that is most ideal is 7 hours. Harvard University did a huge study on like 10,000 people looking at mortality risks and all sort of parameters. And what we found is that 7 hours actually was the ideal amount of sleep to ensure that people live the longest on 7 hours of sleep and not 8. So this helps a lot of patients who are suffering from insomnia or poor sleep is, if you're sleeping 6 hours or 6.5 hours, you're not far off from the ideal. And you only need 5.5 hours to get your core sleep. But what happens is often it's our cognitive beliefs that can affect how we feel after sleeping. So a lot of people who wake up and if they only slept 6 hours, they're like, oh no, I didn't sleep 8 hours. I'm going to feel terrible today. But when they realize, you only need 7 hours and 5.5 hours, you would get your core sleep. So 6 hours is really not that bad. And when you change that mindset, it's incredible how it can support with their mood. So now I have people sleeping 6 and 6.5 hours. They feel great because they've changed that belief. And because I'm also certified in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. So I work with lots of patients with sleep issues. So this is a great question, actually. We can talk forever on sleep, but I think I'll leave it there. I think that should answer the question.
Yeah, that was very, very informative. Yeah, thank you. You mentioned earlier as well, when people come to see you about changing their diets, you try and ask them just to start with one smoothie a day. Today is World Health Day, and we're encouraging people globally to join this green smoothie challenge. So, what's like one key message you'd share with someone new to plant-based eating about how they can incorporate green smoothies and whole food plant-based diet overall into their, to transform their wellness?
Yeah, so food choices is probably the most powerful tool that we have control of our health. So if we can convey that message to someone and say you simply need to start somewhere. I mean, we're not looking for perfection, we're looking for progress, right? So one of the easiest things to do, and I say probably the easiest thing that you can do is start off with a smoothie because you're going to be flooding your body with all these nutrients and antioxidants, which most people on a regular North American diet, their cells are starving. They're eating a lot of calories, but they're not necessarily getting their nutrients because they're eating high calorie, low nutrient dense foods like as I said before, the breads, the pastas, the heavy foods that don't offer a lot of nutrients but packed with fat and sugars. So smoothies are easy. So I always emphasize to people, it will only take you a few minutes. It does not require any cooking skills. So a lot of people don't cook these days, I notice. So this is perfect for them to get started. Takes a few minutes a day. It's backed by science. There's so much science around why plants are good for you. And it's truly transformational. Like I want to tell you a story about a patient of mine. He was, I think, 26 or 27 years old, male patient. When he first came to see me, he brought his blood work in. He already had high cholesterol. He had fatty liver. His blood sugar was borderline, and he was overweight. And he described to me that, his favorite food was fast food. He ate fast food 3, 4 times a week, not every day. He still ate home cooking, but his body just couldn't handle that amount of processed foods and like poor diet food. So he didn't eat vegetables. He didn't like vegetables. He didn't like fruit. But what I convinced him to do was to start getting a green smoothie a day. And to make things as simple as possible, I told him just to buy lots of, boxes of organic spring mix. It could be organic spinach, organic kale, everything pre-washed. So he doesn't even have to wash his vegetables. And I said, fill it at least, about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way, and then add in organic berries. So he did a mixture of, I said, you can do a mixture of different fruits, but start off with berries or whatever you like, essentially. And sprinkle some seeds in. I said hemp seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, a combination if you like. So he actually started doing that, and he's been doing that for over 2 years now. He has lost 50 pounds.
Wow.
And he recently just joined like a kickboxing competition. It was just incredible to see his transformation. And he simply started introducing more plants. So it was the same with him. We started off with the smoothie, then we progressed to working on his diet. And he started incorporating more plant-based proteins, into his diet. So it was a very like natural progression. But when you look at the span of the last 2, 3 years, it's been completely transformational.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and like you say, it's so easy. Rather than change your whole diet overnight, just start adding a green smoothie. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Um, so it is Earth Month, as we know this month. So how do you think small changes like adding a green smoothie can ripple out to improve the health of our environment?
Well, first, the health we spoke about, flooding your body with nutrients, it powers your cells, it can boost your microbiome. So, there's endless sort of benefits. When you reduce oxidative stress and inflammation, it's improving every cell in your body, from your brain to your skin to your heart to your digestion. So, um, it also one thing if people when you improve the health of the cells, you're going to be making more energy. So there's going to be an energy boost there, which is wonderful. Now, how does this translate, to helping our earth? Is that really our food choices is a form of silent activism. because if you look at just simply switching to a plant-based diet, you're going to be reducing the carbon output. So if you replace simply a plant-based smoothie for, let's say, a dairy-based breakfast, you're reducing 90% of your carbon emissions. So if you scale that up, let's say 1,000 people decided to swap out, their dairy-based breakfast, or, people typically eat bacon and eggs or sausage and eggs, and switch that to a plant-based smoothie. 1,000 people, you can save 4.5 million pounds of carbon dioxide per year. And that is like planting 50,000 trees. And then we look at the water savings as well. A pound of spinach uses 96% less water than a pound of beef. So it's huge. So I have people coming in. I had one patient recently who came in, and her whole reason for wanting to start a plant-based diet was actually for the environment. She was in environmental studies. And so, she wasn't so much into her health or the ethical reasons, but she was like, she was doing it for climate change. Now, I don't have many of those patients, but, she really stood out to me. And we were discussing about this, and she was so motivated, to get started. So there you go.
Wow. Some very impactful incentives there. So you can help the planet and our health, and of course the animals. So for those people who may not have started yet, but now that they've been listening to you talk here, and they're incentivized to give it a go, but maybe they're worried about the taste. What's a simple tip or mindset shift that you could suggest to help them embrace at the beginning, where maybe they don't like the taste of it?
Yeah. So for taste, if someone just doesn't like the taste, or they're kind of, they don't like vegetables, which I still have a lot of people who feel that way, is first start with a higher ratio of fruits. So that is usually the simplest way, is do a swap the ratio. So 80% of fruit, 20% of greens. And that usually is very acceptable to patients. And then you gradually go to 70%, 50%, and then you swap the ratio. So eventually they get to the target of, that 75% of greens with 25% of vegetables. And to also educate patients, to remind them that, remember, this is a treat. This is not a chore. So this is probably one of the best things you can do for your body every day, is to infuse it with all of these antioxidants and phytochemicals and, just beautiful nutrients that can help your body heal. I mean, your body's going to thank you for it. It's one of the best things you can do. So see it as a treat. It's like going to the spa, but better, because, you're nourishing your cells inside. And once you have that mindset change, like, oh, I'm doing something really good for myself, and it becomes a positive experience, then generally, humans are built to want pleasure and not pain. So if you are seeing it as a positive experience, then there's encouragement to repeat it over time. Versus if someone sees it as a chore or something they have to do, then there is going to be an issue with avoidance.
Oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I like of starting with the fruit and then gradually changing. That's a brilliant tip. So as we know, unfortunately, there are higher rates of diabetes, autoimmune disease than ever among children. I mean, we've also seen over the last few decades, there's been an increased consumption of meat, dairy, and egg products. Do you think those two things are related? And how can we shift healthy eating in schools, hospitals, public events? It's a big ask, but any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the research is very clear. When you're eating more meat, dairy, eggs, you're increasing your mortality risk, heart disease risk, diabetes, cancer. I mean, the research is very clear, but what is confusing are industry ads. There's a lot of industry funded studies that are biased, that's flooding, the good research. And this translates to confusion in the public of really not knowing what to listen to. And that is one of the hardest things, I think, to bypass, is how do you get rid of all this fake information? And right now, I think we are in a in a global crisis where there's just false information infiltrating into every aspects of life, not just our diet, but in everything we know. And I'm sure you guys can think of lots of things that will align with that. And so, I mean, first of all, we need to fight back with better education and teaching doctors, kids, teachers, parents, institutions, what the real research actually shows. We really need stronger food policies, removing this junk food, like at the minimum is reducing and removing completely processed meats from schools and hospitals. I mean, it's still rampant in there. I mean, and a lot of people are still going for those proteins because it's easy, they're cheap, they're subsidized, right? A lot of dairy products are subsidized, and that's why they're low cost. And so, what we really need to do is get subsidies for healthy foods like plant based foods, so vegetables and fruits. A lot of my patients say it's cheaper to buy, like some kind of processed, ready frozen meal than buying like an orange or apple. And I understand, with food costs rising, it's very challenging for families to try to feed their kids. So, they can't afford sometimes to buy healthy foods. So we need more subsidies for healthy foods. We need stronger labeling and marketing regulations, and controls of certain ads. Certain ads with obvious false information, should not be allowed. But this is sort of what we're seeing. And I mean, in schools, you mentioned like how can we implement this in schools and other institutions, right? Yeah. So I think in schools, we first have to get them to be more aligned with the 2019 Canadian Food Guide. So a lot of schools and hospitals are still very much following the old food guide. I mean, some places have started making changes. I have seen lots of hospitals now offering vegan meals. I mean, it's a special order, but really, a plant-based meal should really be the default in school cafeterias and also in hospitals. And this is one of the wonderful things when I went to my naturopathic college at the time, the food cafeteria was completely plant-based and it was wonderful. There was absolutely no animal protein there. It was always tofu or chickpeas or something of some kind of a bean stew, but that should be the normal. And we need to
Mm.
strengthen that adherence to the 2019 Canadian Food Guide because that food guide already de-emphasizes dairy and it promotes plant-based proteins. But till today, they are still bringing dairy farmers to schools. I mean, my son just had one, I think just before Christmas time, where they had dairy farmers come in and, just promoting dairy. And he came home a little confused, obviously, but, we had a talk and he understood.
Mm.
But the message is still there, that dairy is the go-to to get your calcium, to get your protein and nutrients. And, that really has to go. And we also need to remove, I said processed meats, but also sugary drinks. So can you imagine if we take the schools and hospitals and institutions, we remove the juices and the pop, and instead all they have as a choice are green smoothies? How
Mm.
wonderful would that be? Right? And it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of lobbying. It's going to take a lot of government action. But I really think that the Canadian Food Guide came out at a difficult time. Like it came out in 2019, then we got hit by the pandemic. So I think a lot of the whole plant-based movement really got a little bit interrupted there. But I think now it's time to, push forward, and work with your constituents, work with the government, petitions, everything to kind of push this forward is we need to implement the new Canadian Food Guide in a more widespread manner.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Some great ideas there. And you mentioned doctors as well. And I think you're. I think it's safe to say in the minority of plant-based doctors. And I think I'm right in saying that doctors get very little nutrition training usually in med school. So maybe that could be an area that changes as well.
Absolutely. I mean, they can be offered as CE credits because, we all as health practitioners have to do CE courses. And so I think they just have to offer more plant-based nutrition courses and to demonstrate the research behind, because doctors are care about research. I mean, that's their forte is, they look at evidence. But the problem is, when they're not presented with the evidence, when they're not looking for it, they don't know about it. So we have to bring this, to their attention. So I think even hospitals training nurses and staff to look at patients' nutrition. And if every patient that went to the hospital got some form of nutritional counseling, it can really improve their prognosis in the long run. Because often they're in
Mm,
the hospital for X number of days and they're discharged with a couple drugs or a multitude of drugs, but with no emphasis on, well, what should I eat? And most of the time, when patients ask their doctors, well, what should I eat? They'll tell them, you can eat anything you want. That's the answer they get most of the time. And
mm,
they came to me then and they said, I can eat anything I want, but I don't feel good eating anything I want. And I said, you absolutely should not be eating anything you want. What we need for recovery is an anti-inflammatory diet as plant-based as possible. And I try not to scare people by saying you have to go vegan, but I say you have to be as plant-rich as possible. And
mm,
that's usually something they've never heard of, and their doctors have never explained that to them. But it's not their fault. They don't have the education for it. So I think that's also stemming from, government institutions, right? If there's that elevated importance on nutrition and the connection to health, then schools will start to change. They're going to implement that. And even in grade schools, I always ask, like, how come they don't teach kids about nutrition? They don't teach them
mm,
much at all, but it's the most modifiable thing you can do to reduce health risks. And it's something that can be really simply adopted, but it takes time to adopt these type of policy changes.
mm, definitely. Yeah, and also restaurants. We need restaurants having more plant-based options and maybe even green smoothies. And
Mhm.
one thing that Plant-Based Treaty do is we have a 100 cafe campaign where teams of activists go out into community, visit cafes and restaurants, and ask them to shift towards plant-based. And if they have, it can be as simple like adding plant-based menu item. It can be removing the surcharge for plant-based milks if they have that, and then we give
Mhm.
them window clings to kind of advertise they have plant-based options. So I think raising that awareness at the cafe and restaurant level, the community is also a good idea.
Absolutely, because restaurants have a huge influence on people's diets, right? And often, restaurants goes with trends. So if they see something as trendy, as being popular, especially if they see it all over Instagram, that this is cool, they're going to want to adopt it because, at the end of the day, they're a business, right? So they're looking for something that is profitable. But at the same time, if you partner with cafes and restaurants and be like, hey, listen, if you participate, it could be some kind of directory even is we're going to post you on this directory that you're a plant-based friendly restaurant and that you are actually let's say partaking in this smoothie challenge. So people who, let's say, can't get to their smoothie making, they can visit you and buy a smoothie from you. So that could be a two-way thing where there could be some perks for them as well, um, online, because online presence is a big thing.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, that is the end of the questions I have. We do
Mhm.
have a
Thank
few in
you.
the chat, if that's
Mhm.
okay.
Yes,
Let's
sure, go
see.
ahead.
Okay,
And
so
thank
the
you.
first.
Those are great questions, by the way.
Oh, okay, thank you, thank you. Great answers, amazing, really, really informative. So the first one is from Jacinta, who is in Toronto.
Hello, Jacinta.
Will will the green smoothie interfere with medication for hypothyroidism? Too much spinach and
Hyperthyroidism.
kale
Mhm.
is not good for someone who has thyroid disease.
Yeah, so some people are worried about portrogens, which are certain compounds that are found in greens that can block, let's say, thyroid conversion. But what we've actually seen, and if you have ever read Dr. Michael McGregor's book, How Not to Die. He actually covers a section about autoimmune disease and thyroid disease. Is a lot of people believe if I have thyroid disease, I can't eat soy or I can't have broccoli, cauliflower, or cruciferous vegetables because they are goitrogens. But in fact, what we see is quite the opposite. Although they're goitrogenic, they do contain vast amounts of nutrients that can help the thyroid to function better. So, thyroid disease most commonly is caused by autoimmune disease. So, it's more important to actually work on the autoimmunity and the inflammation to improve the thyroid function. So, I usually say if someone's on medication, now typically with medication, you need to take thyroid medication about 4 hours away from taking anything. So, I have patients either take it before bedtime or very early in the morning, and then you can still proceed with having the smoothie later in the day. And especially if someone's on medication, I'm not worried at all that the green smoothie is going to affect the thyroid function because the medication is going to provide you with a set dosage of T4. So that's not going to affect it. Or the effect would be very minimal and it wouldn't be a reason, to not do the smoothie. And we can also select different types of vegetables and fruits. So remember is that the hypernourishing smoothie is a set recipe, but if you look, there are hundreds of different recipes for smoothies. So we can always choose different things to put inside. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, great answer. Jacinta says thank you so much. So yeah, that was a
Thank you,
great answer.
Jacinta. Yeah, great
Um,
question.
okay, here's another question from Carolyn. Considering the food matrix, are the benefits of drinking a green smoothie the same as eating the foods in their whole form? That's a great question.
Absolutely. In a way, a smoothie is more digestible because you're blending it, so you're breaking the greens in its most digestible parts. When you eat the plant food, it requires proper chewing. Now, someone who, let's say, has digestive issues, let's say poor absorption, or they just don't have enough stomach acid or enzymes, especially in the aging population, smoothies are highly beneficial because they're very easy to digest. It's already all pulverized for them. So, really, your body can already start absorbing the nutrients right away. And it is a whole food. It's just that you're breaking it up. So, having a smoothie is still considered 100% like a whole food plant based diet. And you can actually consume a lot more than you can eat usually. I mean, have you ever tried to eat all of that in your smoothie as a salad? It'll take you a long time, right? But if you blend it, you can consume actually a lot more plants that way.
Yeah, it's very true. Okay, thank you. Yeah, Carolyn, thanks you for the answer to that. Louise, I don't know if this is related to the other question, but Louise was saying she's been reading lately that too much spinach is bad for you. Is that true?
So most people are worried about things like oxalates and phytates, but most people don't have an issue with oxalates. So I've seen a minority of people, let's say, who have oxalate kidney stones, or they have kidney disease, or it's usually something that is metabolically not functioning properly, and we can do metabolic tests to see this elevation in oxalates. So if that's the case, then it's a simple switch. We may just adopt a lower oxalate type of vegetable to go in the juice. But for the majority of people, it's absolutely not an issue. Now, there are some people who are concerned about, other things in the spinach. I would say for the majority of people, it's not a problem. It's more so if someone does have kidney issues and all that, sometimes as simple as soaking your vegetables and fruits for about 4 hours is enough to actually remove some of the oxalates from the food before you blend it. So soaking is a great way. Same with nuts and seeds and all that. Some people are worried about, certain chemicals and like phytates and all that. You can simply just soak your nuts for several hours and then eat them. And that can greatly reduce the amount of phytates and oxalates. But again, for majority of people, it is not an issue. I mean, with little babies, like for instance, when infants and if they're plant-based, let's say they're 6 months old and they're starting to eat solids, I am careful with their dark green leafy vegetable intake because of the high oxalates and phytates. So for them, we would give them small amounts. And as they get older and their kidneys become more mature and stronger, usually it's not a problem at all.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anita says that she uses a lot of kale. I can't even taste the greens with fruit. I find that as well. If you have
Mhm.
lots of fruit, you can't really taste the kale too much.
Yeah,
And she also said that she's been getting a lot more energy with the green smoothie. I found that also lots of energy, a lot of mental clarity. I've been having it first
Mhm.
thing in the morning, and I think it really helps get rid of that brain fog that you can get in the mornings. Um,
Absolutely.
so let's have a look. One more question here.
Well, and I want to add to Anita's comment, and the reason for clearing up the brain fog and as well as the energy is because when you're increasing all these nutrients in your body, it it powers your mitochondria. So mitochondria are the powerhouses in your cells. And what it does, it creates ATP, which is energy. So when you're doing plant-based smoothies, it will help with energy production, which is why you feel a lot more energy, so much better than, let's say, intaking stimulants. And then it clears up brain fog because when you remove inflammation, you're really going to clear up your thinking and your cognition. So that is why doing smoothies can help with conditions like Alzheimer's, even conditions like cognitive decline, because of these nutrients, especially nutrients that are blue, like bluish, like blueberries and all that, are fantastic for the brain. So I'm so happy to hear, Anita, you're having such a positive experience, with the smoothie. And that's what I said. Once you have a positive experience, you see the change, and it hasn't even been very long. It's very encouraging, and you want to continue because you want to feel great. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that story.
Absolutely, yeah. One more question from Kenneth. Kenneth asks, which plants are good for making cooking oils?
Mhm. So cooking oils, the only oil I recommend using is avocado oil and olive oil. And if you absolutely have to do some kind of high heat cooking, then I would use coconut oil. Those are usually the only three oils I would recommend because they generally don't raise bad cholesterol. They're generally anti-inflammatory, and the olive oil and the avocado oil are more like omega-9, so they're more inert oils that doesn't drive inflammation.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, we reached the near the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Julia. So much information. I feel like we could talk for another hour, and it's been a lot of fun. And for anyone who's in Ontario, I'd highly recommend Dr. Julie Liberty Wellness Clinic. I've been to Dr. Julie many times, and I know others on this call have as well. And she's absolutely incredible. So highly recommend Dr. Julie. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.